On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks are looking to make a trade. Still looking. Is Kyrie Irving in the mix? Is PJ Tucker in the mix? Is Myles Turner in the mix? Tons of rumors happening all across the NBA. We're going to break them all down, tell you what the Mavericks could get in on today's Locked On Mavs. Let's go.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Hey, Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions. Bang! Bang! It's good!
And the Mavericks have won the game!
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where the best way to help us grow the show is to comment anything below. Let us know, what's your dream trade for the Mavericks to make? Could be realistic, could be not. If it's not realistic, you'll probably get made fun of, but hey. This is the fun times. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor at Mavs.com, the transaction game guru, the one more thinking. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
It really is the fun time. We always talk about trade deadline week. It's so much fun. These like really 2 weeks, 3 weeks is so much fun. But draft week, it's a blast, man. I love it all.
It's honestly how we became friends. This is what we talked about the most when we first met each other. Yeah. It was like the transaction game was about trades, was about the draft, was about all this, and now here
it never fails.
Now here we are, 6 years later.
We always joke, inside jokes between us two here. We always joke about the distant family members or the friends who don't know us too well that are like, "Hey, Mavs season's over. Slowing up for you?" It's like, whoa.
My mom every year. What do you guys talk about now? What do you guys go 5 days a week all year round? Yeah, we do. Just Locked On Mavericks 5 days a week all year round. And this year, we'll talk about FIBA. I finally learned how the schedule works this week, so we'll talk about that later this offseason. But today, just a ton of people dropped rumors and, emptying the notebooks, Stein, Shams. Like,
you didn't use the drop. I'm so disappointed.
A bunch of people are dropping stuff. Here's the first one. That The Athletic has said, according to sources, the conversations about Kyrie Irving's future have gone stagnant between him and the Brooklyn Nets. An impasse currently exists among the parties that clears the way for the seven-time All-Star to consider the open marketplace, sources say. Isaac Harris, should the Mavericks have any interest in Kyrie Irving? I have already seen on Twitter today a Photoshop of Kyrie Irving in a Dallas Mavericks jersey.
Well, I mean, let's list out the teams who have cap space. So, I mean, we've heard this before, Jalen Brunson. I can't wait to see Kyrie in a Pistons uniform. But no, I mean, should Dallas be interested? I think a talent like Kyrie, I think you're always interested in, like, what does it look like?
It's like the Nike signature athlete at certain points.
Yeah, the extent of that interest, then that can be up for debate, what it would cost, all that. Because obviously Dallas has no cap space. If you're listening to saying, yeah, add Kyrie, it's like, okay, you don't have anywhere close to the cap space, so it'd have to be a sign and trade. Then you're talking about what type of players. I do think Dallas would have players that Brooklyn would be interested in, like, as far as fitting in their rotation. I think they would be interested in a guy like Jalen Brunson and all of that. Whether Dallas would be willing to give up assets and all of that, whether Brunson would want to go there, like Brunson would have to agree to that too. Like all of that stuff, that's a whole different conversation.
And that's not even considering the cap implications on all this. Like you would have to do double sign-in trades for Kyrie and Brunson, and you'd have to do so many different things to try and get under the cap and to try and get to a place where you can make these deals happen, that at the end of the day, it would be like Luka and Kyrie and maybe Christian Wood, and like that's it. That would be your whole team, basically. And you have to try to build around that. And so with that, plus the idea of Kyrie Irving, and would him and Cuban get along? Would they have one disagreement about something, and then all of a sudden Kyrie's not playing for the Mavericks? Like you just don't know what could happen with him. Would him and Jason Kidd see eye to eye? Jason Kidd has coached these guys, and he likes to have leadership in the locker room. If Kyrie Irving thinks that he comes in and is the leader, and Luka's like, I don't know about this guy. Like, I respect his talent, but I don't know if I'm going to listen to him in the locker room, like tell me all the time about how the 2016 finals was won by him, his one shot in game 7, right? Like, how many times is he going to tell me that? I don't know if it works. And then all of a sudden the chemistry that this team built up, the camaraderie, the, collectiveness, the playing together and all that kind of goes away. Plus the durability. He's missed 30% of his career to injuries so far. So there's just so many different reasons why you should be out on Kyrie Irving. I would much rather have Jalen Brunson than Kyrie, just straight up.
Just straight up.
Just straight up because of the dependability of injury, the fitting in already, the the scoring from Brunson and Kyrie. Like, obviously Kyrie is a better player, but I'd much rather have Jalen Brunson on this team the way that it just played out than Kyrie Irving. It's just the way that it is for me right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think it's as like open the book, shut the book type thing, because there is a world in which you do get, the high ceiling of a Kyrie Irving who's won a title, who's played with another guy, like Luka and LeBron and Cleveland and stuff.
How many teams now have talked themselves into this story?
I know.
Brooklyn,
I'm just,
Boston.
I'm just saying. I agree with you. I'm just saying
Cavs,
I would not be 100% all
Team
out.
USA.
You wouldn't even take the
Duke.
call from Kyrie. You wouldn't even take the call. You
take the
not
call.
Interested at all?
You take the call and see what happens and see what they're wanting. But the problem is, like, if it's going to be for Brunson, you have to do so many, like a double sign and trade and all that. And there's just so many things that are going against you that are too complicated cap wise to talk about here. But it just wouldn't be worth it at the end of the day. So you can call and make that conversation. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, Andrew Baker, remember when you worked in Brooklyn? Hey, there's a guy that's in Brooklyn right now, and I know you're a cap guy. So can you figure out a way to get Kyrie Irving here? And he goes, all right, let me get out my whiteboard, and then also let me get out my calculator. It has to be a graphing calculator because it's so complicated.
Indeed, also.
Yeah, right. Let me look at real estate somewhere else. So for all those reasons, Shark Tank, I'm out.
I am fascinated to see how the story plays out, though.
Me too.
Where he goes, does he go? Can he pull off an LA? Does he want to play with LeBron again?
The Lakers, Knicks, and Clippers are expected to be among the interested suitors if Kyrie heads elsewhere, according to The Athletic.
Shocking. LA and New York.
Where do you think he ends up? Knicks would be hilarious. The Nets versus Knicks, if Kevin Durant stays with the Nets and Kyrie goes to the Knicks, would just be must-watch TV every time.
I just don't know what his leverage would be. That would be my only thing. It would have to be like, I'm going to retire, or else like help me sign it. Like, if you're going to the Clippers, none of their crap entices you. If you're Brooklyn, the Lakers, none of their crap entices you either. So, I mean, I guess you could talk about New York, the Knicks, but I don't know how that plays out. My gut tells me they come to agreement on like a shorter, like a James Harden type deal, what it looks like he's going to do in Philly, and he stays in Brooklyn. Yeah. Durant makes some calls and says, no, I'm not staying here with Joe Harris. So
the shots at Joe Harris already.
Sorry.
Other news that came out, PJ Tucker, that PJ Tucker is opting out of his $7.4 million player option with Miami to try and join another championship contender, or even the championship contender that maybe is the Miami Heat. I started to look around, and that the mid-level exception is $10.3 million. So teams out there that have that, the taxpayer mid-level is what the Mavericks have. That's $6.3 million. So most teams have the taxpayer mid-level. The Mavericks, the Warriors, the Celtics, the Bucks, the Suns, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Sixers, the Nets, and the Lakers all only have the taxpayer mid-level. So they don't have enough in the open market, in cap space or whatever, to give PJ Tucker more than $7.4 million. Here are the teams, Isaac Harris, with the full mid-level that made the playoffs last year. Miami has it. So this could be he turns down 7.4 and takes the full mid-level from them. Chicago is kind of an interesting one.
That's actually a good one. Yeah.
Toronto is a kind of interesting one for them.
Played there before.
Atlanta, Cleveland, and here's the one.
Ready.
The Memphis Grizzlies of Memphis, Tennessee. They have the full mid-level exception that they could give to PJ Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know. Is he declining it to get a longer-term deal, or is he declining it because he has that player option? Obviously, that he declines. So it's like, is he doing this thinking it's not a guaranteed? Oh, he's only doing this to get $10 or $11 million next year. He could be doing it saying, hey, right now there's still interest in me. So instead of just playing out this year and me potentially getting hurt and I'm already old, and go ahead and sign me right now to a 2 or 3 year deal, some other team for a round. So that would be the only route for Dallas is, would you sign him to a 3 year deal?
Right.
For that, and it's like you're taking a chance because he's older. So that would be the only route. I still think he goes to like, one of the LA teams
and he gets like 3 years, 18 instead of, the 7.4 he was going to get this year, or even the 10.3. It's like, that he would get from the full mid-level from somewhere. But I think he gets the full mid-level from somewhere else, keeps doing the 1 year deal.
Yeah.
He is 37, and he'll be 38 by the end of next season. So, but he was a big part of the Milwaukee championship run last year. He was a pretty big part of Miami this year. Started 70 games for them. He started all 18 games in the playoffs for them. He averaged 8 points a game, shot 45% from three in the playoffs. Like, he was still defending at a high level and all of that. It would be incredible for the Mavericks. So if they could pull that off, like that's the defensive wing. All the defensive wings we talked about yesterday, that would be an incredible add. Even though he's 37, still is really, really usable. Still has something left in the tank, at least
like
for
PJ, you wouldn't even
year.
have to start here, bro. Like, you wouldn't even have to play 30 minutes.
Is that a positive for him? Is that what he wants?
I don't know. He's 37.
It's interesting. So, yeah, that's what's happening with PJ Tucker. Could be back with Miami, but we'll see. That's an interesting one to follow. Coming up, Myles Turner. The Pacers are apparently now in serious discussions among trades with Myles Turner. Myles Turner has been connected to the Mavericks a ton, so we'll talk about that and more coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You got to try their award-winning app. It's Prize Picks, and you're going to have to try it. You pick 2 to 5 players, and over under their projections, you can do NHL, MLB, basketball if it's whenever it's still coming back. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. All you have to do is pick an over-under on their projections, goals scored, points scored, home runs, hits, whatever you want to do. And for a limited time, Prize Picks is an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. You get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Pick entry scores a single point, but you got to use the promo code NBA. Use that promo code NBA at Prize Picks on their app. It's just you versus the projected numbers. You're not playing professionals. You're not playing all that. So go check it out. Prize Picks, promo code NBA. All right, Isaac Harris. The ultimate mock draft has been made. The picks are all in. Our picks are in. And episode 4 should be dropping today on Tuesday if I finished editing it. And that's where our pick comes in. We made a pick. We did this all before the Christian Wood trade. So if you want to see what the Mavs could have done, we have a pretty good example for you in our trade that we made. And everybody loves the trade that we made. Everybody loves it. From Raphael, Richard, Ryan McDonough, everybody loved it.
We traded up a little bit, and we got a guy who's fallen out of the lottery that most people have mocked in the lottery.
We made another trade this year, 5 years in a row, and we've got another swing on a guy that we think is going to help the Mavs. So go check that out. It's the ultimate mock draft. It's only on podcasts right now, so check it out wherever you get your podcasts or on the Locked On NBA podcast feed. All right, Isaac Harris. We've been talking about some rumors that the Pacers are seriously discussing trades centered on Malcolm Brogdon and Myles Turner, according to The Athletic. The Wizards and Knicks are interested in Brogdon with the number 10 and the number 11 picks. The Hornets have expressed interest in Myles Turner. They have the 13th and 15th picks. And I kind of wonder if this has anything to do with the Christian Wood trade. And I say that because we know that Myles Turner is a player that I think the Mavericks should have gone after. He's right in the Mavs' backyard. He'd be a perfect fit in the lineup and all that. There is some injury concern. There's some pick and roll concerns and things like that. But the Hornets had the 13th and 15th picks. That's better than the 26th pick. Very much. You do the Jimmy Johnson chart of what the picks mean and how much value they have. Those picks mean way more and have way more value than 26. And so if they were already in discussions around that pick, and the reason why we didn't get a deal done for Myles Turner in the ultimate mock draft that we just talked about is because we talked to Tony East of Locked On Pacers and said, hey, what about this whole Tim Hardaway, Buddy Hield swap with Dwight Powell and the pick and all that, and just the pick and not even swapping picks or anything like that. And he said, I think Myles Turner, I think everything else in that trade is a wash. And I think that Myles Turner is more valuable than the 26th pick. That's what Tony East told us, host of Locked On Pacers.
This is correct.
And so far, we think that that's correct. And from this rumor, it proves it, that they think that he's probably worth that 13th or 15th pick. Isaac, what do you think about this rumor?
I mean, it makes sense if you're Charlotte. It makes sense if you're Indiana, if you don't think you're going to lock in Myles Turner long term, because he's basically going to be playing on an expiring contract. And if you can't sign him to the extension,
and coming to the Mavs that year.
If there are Mavs fans saying, man, why didn't we get Turner instead of Wood? You're not getting anywhere close to Myles Turner for the package that we gave up for Christian Wood. Like, you're not giving up 4 end of the bench expiring contracts, and you're not doing the 26 pick straight up for Myles Turner. Just isn't happening. So they can get more for that for Myles Turner. And if they end up trading him on draft night or before it, then we're going to see that, whether it's the 13th and 15th, whether it's one of them, whether it's 15 and PJ Washington and something else. Like, they're going to get a few pieces back for Myles Turner, and rightfully so. He's a good player.
Really good player. And the Mavericks definitely got the better offensive player of the two. Like, there's no question that Christian Wood is a better offensive player than Myles Turner. Better shooter, better roller, can get his own shot, all that kind of stuff. Defense-wise, Turner leaps and bounds, been better as a rim protector, defending on the perimeter, all that stuff.
And it could have been for Dallas. What if Dallas was talking to Indiana about Myles Turner? And then everything that we've read about the Houston and Christian Wood thing is they've been calling teams. They've been shopping him around. They've been wanting to trade him.
Last trade deadline now. They've been doing it.
Like, what if Dallas has been talking about Myles Turner this whole time with Indiana, and all of a sudden Rafael Stone calls up and it's like, all right, listen, we really want to trade him for the draft. Just give us the 4 expirings and the pick, and let's call it a day. And Nico and them's looking around saying, all right, well,
really?
Myles Turner might be the better fit, but for this price, yeah, let's swing at it for this. And we can still keep all of our other trade assets too, and add a guy like Christian Wood. So obviously we don't know how that played out, but that would make sense to me that this was such a good offer from Dallas's angle that, all right, well, we got to move on something like this.
And so now you start to say, well, can the Mavs get Myles Turner and pair him with Christian Wood? That would be ideal, because all the stuff about Christian Wood is that he's better as a 4 than a 5 defensively, and you can still run the same stuff because Turner can still shoot the 3. But if you look at what they're talking about now with the Hornets, either picks 13 or 15, and some of the young players that they have more to offer than what the Mavericks have at this point. And so I think the Myles Turner thing, unless they take a package that is way less than this, that dream is dead for the Mavs, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
Womp womp. I didn't even do the soundboard for that. I just decided to do it.
Womp womp.
Another interesting thing, Mark Stein has been hosting these Spotify live rooms. Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer was on there as well. And there's some talks about what the Mavs are going to do. Every time he goes on there, he gets asked about Mavs stuff, which I think is funny.
Of course.
But a couple people on Twitter were saying that Mark Stein suggested that the Mavericks are exploring trades for Spencer Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., Davis Bertans. They're still trying to get better. They're still looking for another kind of trade. They want a bigger wing. We know this. We talked about it yesterday. We gave a bunch of options for bigger wings. And so now they're looking at trades for Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Davis Bertans. Isaac, what do you think the Mavs could even get for those guys?
Well, I don't think you're getting anything for Bertans right now. So then it just asks you, the question, mainly because, he's making $16 million a year. Like, you're just not going to get hardly anything of value from Bertans' contract. So then you're just asking yourself the question of Tim versus Dinwiddie. And I think the biggest question, and we'll do a pod probably later on this week talking about different questions for the Mavs, but the biggest question, spoiler alert, is how much money is Mark willing to spend this offseason? And it's like, if Mark is willing to spend, no matter the cost, no matter the price Brunson goes up to, no matter what it costs to bring all these guys back, like Tim and everybody back, then all right, there you go. You're going to have the most talented, depth-wise roster that we've had in a few years. But if they want to go out there and say, hey, we're looking at shedding some money, you have contracts that I think other teams would be open to. And it might piss Mavs fans off if they go out and they try to dump one of these contracts for basically nothing to save money on luxury tax stuff and all of that.
Like, hey, Tim plays really well in Detroit. You got all that cap space that no one wants. Like, go ahead and we'll send him for a second round pick, right? Just to dump money.
Yeah. So then you're like, what if they're getting Dragic for the vet minimum? And then you're like, all right, well, if we're going to bring Dragic off the bench, then we have Dinwiddie, then we have Tim, then, and so then at that point, do they look at it and say, all right, do we try to swap Tim for a defensive-minded wing off the bench? Do we try to swap Dinwiddie? How much of what Dinwiddie brings, even though I think I like the Dinwiddie-Dragic pairing off the bench.
Yeah.
What if they look at it and say, all right, well, Dragic at this cost is going to bring a percentage of what Dinwiddie does. So do we go out in the market and say, all right, is there a defensive-minded wing out there that we could swap Dinwiddie for that guy and to, bolster our defense off the bench? Then that's an angle I could see him take too.
Yeah, or Tim. Either way, because both those guys coming off the bench, I'm really interested to see how Dinwiddie, Tim Hardaway works as a bench unit. As a backcourt.
They could work. They could work.
They could work for sure. I'm really interested to see, but it's definitely not a good defensive pairing at all with those two guys. Now they do have size. They're both like 6'5", 6'6", and they have some size there, so the Mavs could make it work there. But the problem is Tim, Dinwiddie, Bertans, Dwight, like all of a sudden that bench unit is just not really stopping a lot of people. And so you have some stuff to work with. And so maybe you take one of those two guys, and that's how you get your defensive-minded wing, like you said. So there's some options for the Mavs. It's interesting, but it's good to see that they're being aggressive still. The Christian Wood trade was aggressive. They're going to keep trying to be aggressive with some of these moves, and we'll see, like Isaac said, what Mark Cuban wants to pay. What is he, at the end of the day, if he's starting to say,
the wine.
If he's starting to hit the wine, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't want to pay this luxury tax for a team that overachieved and made the Western Conference Finals, but we don't think is a title contender just yet, then we'll see if it's one of those guys. So interesting rumors coming up. Let's get into a couple other things. The Mavericks are not going to use the traded player exception. John Collins is on the move. Should the Mavs go after John Collins? John Collins again. Here we go. We'll talk about all that and more rumors on today's Locked On Mavs. But right now, let's talk about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's impossible for your local dealership to have all the parts that you need. How could they store them all there? So, do you want to get up, leave the house, go to a store, say I want this part? They say, okay, well, what kind of car do you have? And you're like, okay, I have this car. Maybe you don't know, so you have to go back out to your car and check again. Then you come back in. Then they're like, what's your VIN number? And you're like, I don't know what that is. Then you have to go back out. You take a picture of it. You come back. And then they're like, okay, well, we have it, but we don't have it here. It's got to be shipped in 5 days or whatever. Come back and get it then. And then all of a sudden, you've wasted all this time. Don't waste all that time. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. They'll ship it right to you. They have all of it lined up for you. You don't have to go look through all that other stuff. You can do it at home at your own time, and you're going to save money. 30%, 50%, even 100% more for the same parts. So go check it out. rockauto.com. See all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box. They know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
Doncic, saucy.
Nick, that's
You like that? You like the end of that one?
I remember my first time.
I was on page 3 instead of page 1 here. All right, Isaac. Couple more rumors happening in the NBA. That the Utah Jazz are looking for a head coach. I don't think that's breaking news anywhere. They are looking for a head coach, but they listed out. They listed out a million trade coaching candidates. Honestly, like 15 or 16, and Sean Sweeney is one of them.
David Locke was one.
Vernon Maxwell was one of them. What do we think about Sean Sweeney in Utah?
Get away. So
kind of
Utah, don't do it. To see Sean Sweeney go coach for Dwayne Wade would hurt my soul. Sean Sweeney, friend of the pod.
True.
I've said this before. I would be happy for him because there's only 30 of these jobs in a league. Personally, it would be a big bummer for the Mavs.
Other candidates for him: former NBA champion assistant coach Terry Stotts, Frank Vogel, Jason Kidd's old boss, and
the Lakers to
that would be hilarious. And NBA champion Jason Terry, G League head coach Jason Terry is a candidate for the Jazz job. So good for him. Bunch of other assistants, like pretty much any assistant in the NBA. Knicks assistant, Bucks assistant, Celtics assistant, Sixers assistant. It's like everything in here is an assistant coach. Suns assistant. So interesting to see
Snyder taking a year off to be co-host of Locked On Jazz with David.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Everybody go to Locked On Jazz and just ask on the YouTube
on the comments
and ask, is Quinn going to be your new co-host? That's all you need to leave.
Quinn Snyder going to co-host? ? Just do it. Go to Locked On Jazz. Go check it. Go to David Locke.
Quinn saw that rebrand. I was like, I'm out.
Wow, this is a piss poor rebrand is what it is. Other news. According to Mark Stein, the Mavericks' looming acquisition of Christian Wood, though through the first major trade of the offseason, makes it far less likely, according to one source, that the Mavericks will utilize the $10.9 million trade exception that they got with the Josh Richardson trade back in last July. What's the thoughts about the Mavericks not using this trade exception?
It's money. It goes back to that question: is how much is Mark willing to pay? Because, I mean, you could realistically, like, the starting five seems set. Christian Wood, insert him into that, that five spot. So then you're looking at Dinwiddie. Now you're adding Tim back to the mix, making 20. So you obviously still have Bertans at 16. And yeah, well, I'm just talking about the bench. I'm saying, all right, then you can go out and use the trade exception, which is like 10. Then you could go out and use the tax mid-level there around 6. Then you can still add vet minimums because you have the roster spots at that point. So now you're adding in more salaries. That equals more luxury tax. That, I mean, you're looking at a team that could be, I mean, if they utilized all of those, you're looking at a $190, $200 million team, just salary cap. We're not even talking about luxury tax stuff.
Eesh.
So that is pretty high up. It's not our money. So of course, from our angle, it's like, use every asset you got, like absorb the contract, take something to the trade exception, use the tax mid-level, all that stuff. But it all comes down to, what Mark's willing to spend on that.
And these trade exceptions are hard to use, right? Most of them just expire for the most part. And so we gave a bunch of examples last week, I think, and then even this week we gave a couple examples of guys that they could get with that $10.9 million, but they're hard to use because you have to get the other team to agree to it. They have to have a reason to dump that player for the most part, or you give them a draft pick or something like that. The Mavericks don't have a lot of draft picks to trade, and so these are hard to use. This is probably why that they're looking like they're not going to use this.
And it expires coming up really soon.
And it expires the 27th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, June 27th. So in a week.
7 days.
It's coming up. According to The Athletic.
Yes, sir. That's what you do.
The board is all over the place today. Rumor has...
I was going to say, I want to make a plug for Mark Stein's Substack. I feel like we've been saying according to Mark Stein a ton on our pod. He does great work. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you go to substack.com. I think it's .com. I don't think it's
Yeah. It's all over his Twitter too. He tweets out the link all the time, but pay for it. It's worth it.
Yeah, he does awesome, great work.
You pay for it. I pay for it. It's worth it.
Yep, for sure.
But Trae Young, DeAndre Hunter, and Onyeka Okongwu are widely regarded as the only two Hawks, or the only two other Hawks besides Trae Young, that the team wouldn't trade, according to The Athletic and Shams Charania. But the likelihood of a John Collins trade, according to league sources, indicate it's as high as it's ever been. Isaac Harris, we've been down this route several times before with John Collins. Like, I don't know how many times we've done the Myles Turner trade route, but the John Collins trade route has been done before. What are the thoughts on a John Collins trade for the Mavs?
Can we just get some fresh names? Dragic, Myles Turner.
Christian Wood was the fresh name, and he's in. So as soon as one fresh name came up, the Mavs made a trade for him.
I don't think Dallas was gonna go down that route. John Collins, Christian Wood. However you feel about
that doesn't work.
Front court pairing. But I mean, if they're sitting there throwing out things like John Collins could get you number 7 in the draft, then Dallas isn't sniffing around that. Like, they don't really have a shot in that. So.
No, and the Kings just seem like they're going to move on from him. They've apparently the Hawks are going to move on from him. They've apparently talked to the Sacramento Kings about number 4. They've talked about other things with him, and man, that would be crazy for the Kings to trade for John Collins right now, especially if they're going to send that number 4 pick, because him and Sabonis, that doesn't seem to me to work out very well for them either.
I'm old enough to remember when the Hawks went to their Eastern Conference Finals and people were really upset with the Mavs team building. And like, look at Atlanta. Look what they did for Trae Young. They signed all these players. Look how they built their team. Well, now they're trying to blow up their team. So anyway. I'm old enough to remember that still, and it's been a while.
Some of the contracts they signed, they're trying to get off of now. The John Collins contract, Gallinari making $20 million this year. Capela, they're in and out with. Bogdanovich was kind of in and out of the rotation and lineups at some points. He's making $18 million. Like it just hasn't worked out for them as well as they had hoped. And even though they were bored at the regular season last year, so. Another one here is that according to The Athletic, the Timberwolves have discussed deals around veteran centers, including Atlanta's Clint Capela. So we were talking about the Hawks trying to make a big move. Is Clint Capela that move? We'd mentioned one trade in our trade ideas for a center with like a Gobert going to the Hawks and then Clint Capela coming to the Mavericks. Is that completely off the table now with Christian Wood?
I mean, I feel like it is. I'm leaning that route of like, hey, it feels like their center bullpen right now is going to be the Christian Wood, Dwight Powell, Maxey. They still need to probably add another, weirdly in that trade, traded Boban, traded Marquise Chris. So, at least some bigger bodies at the end of the bench that Marquise Chris got some run every now and then, Boban got some run every now and then. They probably do need to add like a fourth body, big man at the end of the bench somewhere. But I feel like they're done with it unless they did some type of, Dwight with somebody else and got another, I don't know.
Or for some reason, this was the Tim or Dinwiddie trade, right? Somehow it was worth it. Like they throw Josh Green in there and they're like, okay, well now all of a sudden that's interesting to us. Like, I don't know if that would make it work, but yeah, they're shopping him at least, or at least the Hawks are listening to offers.
If the Christian Wood trade didn't happen, I would be definitely interested. I mean, we talked about it
for sure
until the trade. So it feels natural now that Christian Wood's a starter. Dwight much better suited for a backup, spot.
Yes.
Come in and roll to the rim with Luka for, a handful of minutes here and there. So it feels like the center bullpen rotation has, shaped out a little bit.
Did we poo-poo every single rumor that happened today? I think all of them we were like, yeah, I know the Mavs aren't going to do this. They're not going to do this. But they're probably going to make one more move, right? Whether it's just another defensive wing, whether it is a Tim or a Dinwiddie trade or something like that. I think they are going to make one more move, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a route you could take with it saying, hey, they can make another swing. They have some contracts with it. They have Tim. They have expiring of Dwight. Maxey's expiring too. Like, they have expirings. They have future picks. They could really entertain that. Or the route that I think they'll take is just, let's bring most of these guys back at this point. You've already added Christian Wood. You're adding Tim Hardaway to this, basically. If you get a Goran Dragic for a vet minimum, like those are three guys who are not on your team at all, and three guys who would be part of your rotation. So at that point, it's like you kind of see it. So if they don't do anything on draft night, I wouldn't be shocked. Selfishly, I'm like, trade back into this draft. Let's have some fun with it.
Get one more guy.
Do this. Yeah.
The move is also to run it back into the regular season, to bring the guys back in that you got, and to see what their value is at the trade deadline. And maybe it's a Brunson, Christian Wood, Josh Green, like maybe even Tim Hardaway, like a bunch of those guys come together, and maybe that gets you the next star, right? Like the next guy.
Yeah. We're saying this at the 33 mark of the podcast.
I'm just saying that's the play.
That's the underlying thing that I don't feel like a ton of people are talking about, in the sense of you turn 4 expiring contracts that really didn't have any value at all to a guy in Christian Wood who does have value. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying he's bringing you back Bradley Beal, but he does have value more than those other 4 guys have. So now you have an expiring contract. Now he's expiring. Dwight's expiring. Maxey's expiring. You have, Jalen Brunson's going to be under contract for a long time, locked up. Like, you're going to have all your future picks, to where they're entering that discussion of 6 months from now, next offseason, whoever that next disgruntled star is that wants to leave their team, Dallas is going to have the assets at that point, the expiring contracts that are good enough that where they're not just dead weight money. They're going to have the young star in Brunson, and they're going to have their future picks to where they could.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
Have a seat at the table for any of the big names to hit the market.
Oh,
he's doing well. My son's doing well.
There you go. That's all the rumors that we saw, guys. Go check out the ultimate mock draft. We made our pick today, so go and see who we made. Let us know what you think about it in the YouTube comments of this video. Let us know what you think about that pick. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom!